the recollection mechanism becomes sharp with that. Same thing happens with group discussion. You may have read a lot of things, but to put them together in context, interject when people bring up a subject, to connect the dots at the right time. These skills improve a lot if you discuss in groups. So small groups means not more than 8 to 10 people. Take up a topic, find a buddy, mentor if it is possible. That is the best way to improve your skills for cracking the SSB. Personality development is subject by itself, but that is some issue where I find that. Again, namaskar.
Namaskar.
Sir. How are you, sir? It's wonderful seeing you after a long time.
Sir, sir, your mic is on mute.
Your mic is on mute, sir.
Malay, I think you'll have to unmute.
Mic is on mute.
Mic is mute.
Yes.
Yes.
Now you're audible.
Now it's okay. Now it's okay. Yes.
The voice from
Good to see my dear friends, Professor Satyanaran Mishra, Brigadier Atanu. Yes, very nice. We are all together in one family with our dear friend Deepak, director of the IAS Academy. He is training very serious trainer. He is training a lot of people who are taking responsible positions in the Odisha government, and a few of them have got through IAS also, IAS, IPS, and other UPSC services. So we wish him all the best in his efforts. And back to Atanu, please carry on with your views.
So I was just giving a few tips for preparing for the interviews while we are waiting for you. But now that you have joined, I think Deepak will do the coordination and start the session. Yeah, Deepak.
Yeah. So good evening, everyone. Thank you, everyone. जो मैंने join करछन्ती as a student जो मैंने going to appear in the Odisha Civil Service रा interview appear करिया को जाउछन्ती और main को भी सेमान लिखिया को जाउछन्ती prelim point of view. So today it is a great opportunity for all of us. We have 3 legend person with us who can give their practical experience. We can read the book, but they are the book themselves. So ame directly tankothu aji kichi padhiba. So let me first welcome all our panel member. First of all, I will welcome Professor S.N. Mishra sir, and who is already Indian Economic Service Government of India already have a vast experience, different roles काम करिछन्ती, and lot of university रे भी like हमरा IIM Bangalore हला बहुत गुडे university रे eminent professor हमर थिले. Next I will welcome Dr. Malay Mishra sir, who was already served in the Indian Foreign Service as an ambassador to different important role in different countries. Then I will welcome to Major General Atanu Cuttack sir, who have 37 years of experience in the defense field. So we have all 3 persons who have huge experience in economics or security or geopolitics. So today topic we are going to discuss about the recent Bangladesh unrest and how it is going to impact the India relation, how Bangladesh and India relation is going to be affect in future. So on that point we'll discuss. So let me first ask Professor S.N. sir to talk about the economic angle, how this unrest, Bangladesh unrest, how it will going to impact the India-Bangladesh relationship in the economic point of view. So over to you, sir.
Good evening to all our friends. Normally, these batting orders would have started with Ambassador Malaya, my dear friend. but I have changed the batting order because I have to peel off at 8 o'clock. There is a statutory requirement I have to be out. So that is why, without the permission of the ambassador and the general, I would be starting the innings, friends, on the economic dimension of the Indo-Bangladesh relations. I'll say take a couple of minutes, friends. As all of you know, that India had a very, very huge role, I think a very humongous role in the liberation of Bangladesh in 1971. And India shares the largest border with Bangladesh, about 4,096 kilometers, which runs across 5 states. West Bengal, Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram. And beginning with its liberation, India had a land border agreement where Mujibur Rahman and Indira Gandhi signed it in 1974, which actually fructified in 2015 in the 100th constitutional amendment. Took quite a while for the agreement to be signed. We also have a lot of agreements with Bangladesh in terms of water sharing, and that has been a little contentious area at times. But be that as it may, we have a Ganga water agreement in 1996, a Feni water agreement in 2019, and about 21 million Bangladesh people depend on the Tista River. So therefore, there is a lot of connectivity geographically between India and Bangladesh. Unlike Pakistan, where we still do not have a very defined border except for the line of control, we have a settled boundary with them. However porous it may be, but we have a settled boundary. But I'll stick to a few economic issues. I've chosen 5 very important issues. I'll start with the first issue, which is on trade, importance of trade. Now, as all of us know, trade is a real catalyst for peace and stability in bilateral and multilateral relations. And India's export to Bangladesh last year was about $10 billion. And we import about 1 billion from Bangladesh. So we have a favorable balance of
I think, sir, we are not able to hear you.
It's frozen. There was some connectivity issue.
vis-a-vis Bangladesh. Can you hear me, friends? Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
So basically, Bangladesh has been depending on India for pure cotton yarn and electricity, non-retail, cotton suits, whereas we depend on Bangladesh for pure vegetable oil, non-knit men's wear textiles. So I'm just trying to, flag this as an important point, because China today, Bangladesh has been one of the front runners in ready-made export of textile garments. That's the most important source of GDP for Bangladesh. In fact, the textile sector, particularly the ready-made textile sector, this particular sector generates employment for close to 25 million people. In India, it's around 45 million, and a strength of 1,400 million. In a country of 170 million, close to 25 million depend on textiles. And you also find very interesting evolution in the textile policy. When Mujibur Rahman became the president, he actually nationalized all the textile mills, which was privatized during President Ersad's time in 1983. He changed the textile policy in 1983, much before India embraced free trade, or as you can call it, economic liberalization. So Ershad was possibly an unconscious hand of history in Bangladesh to set in motion privatization in the textile mills. But you know, the textile sector has been a real vibrant success story of Bangladesh. Many people talk of the cheap labor. In fact, 30% illiterate women, they work in the garment sector. It's a sector predominantly, having workers from women workers. But it is the signing totem of globalization. But very interestingly, you'll find that the policy of privatization was continued with the last president also. Bangladesh has been continuing with a policy of free trade in textiles. They also have been practicing free trade in terms of importing high-end fabrics. So apart from cheap labor, they have never protected their domestic industries. This is something which we are today criticizing in India, that over the last 2 years, we have become increasingly protectionist. But Bangladesh had never got into a protectionist regime. So therefore, this is one of the major success stories of Bangladesh. Now, energy and power. This is also a very interesting dimension. I thought I'll just mention to all of you. And there is a change in the character of our collaboration in energy and power. Now, in 2010, India signed a 35 years power transmission agreement. And this was between Power Grid Corporation of India with Bangladesh Power Development Board. This was in 2010. So to have power plants of 1320 megawatt. But that kind of a character, this character of power agreement between a government entity and the Bangladesh Power Board has changed in 2017. Now it is very interesting to find that from a government to government level collaboration or a PSU to PSU level collaboration, now the power arrangement has been completely gone over to the private sector in India. For instance, the Adani Power has a long-term pact with the Bangladesh Power Development Board to supply electricity for its coal-based power at Cuttack. Even the Ambanis also have a huge investment. So therefore, the investment in power by these two big behemoths has been of the order of about $5 billion. The point I'm just trying to flag is that while there is a lot of collaborative arrangement for power, the levers have shifted to the private sector. The collaboration is now between the private sector and their counterparts in Bangladesh. So that's very interesting. But the other point I'd like to mention, very interestingly, though I mean India and Bangladesh have been very close allies, there has been a huge boost in their Human Development Index. In fact, the little sister today has a Human Development Index which is around 0.67 as against 0.64 by India. And in terms of life expectancy, I was just checking the Human Development Report. Their life expectancy is about 73.7 as against about 67.7 in India. Even in terms of mean years of schooling, they are around 7.4 as against 6.6 of India. They have also slightly done better in terms of per capita income. The point which I'm trying to mention is that, while in 2010, just 14 years back, they were almost 15% behind India in terms of Human Development Index. But in all these parameters, as I mentioned, in health, in education, and even in per capita income, Bangladesh has gone noses ahead of us. So therefore, unlike China, with whom we have a huge balance of trade deficit around 600 billion at the last reckoning. We have a favorable trade balance, but we have to also see that comparatively how your human development index is a little better than all of them. Now, very interestingly, today you have Muhammad Yunus, the Nobel laureate, in charge of the interim government, and I had the good fortune of having a lunch with him in Amravati, where we had the national economic conference, national conference on economics that happened in Amravati in 2017, and he had come for the presidential address. So I was heading a technical chair, and I had the good fortune of having lunch with him and I could spend about an hour with him. But the abiding memory that I have of that meeting, friends, is his reference to Ilavat. So when I mentioned to him that how the Grameen Bank has done wonders in Bangladesh, he said, "You guys don't give enough credit to the mother of microfinance, Ilavat." So I found it very, very endearing. He said, it was she who really inspired me. And he said, in my Nobel recognition speech, I did refer to her. So therefore today, so that's the India connection, that the Ilavat connection that India also has with Bangladesh. So to sum it up, friends, I'll just take a couple of minutes before I wind up. So many people are quite upset that a very settled arrangement between India and Bangladesh, where you had a very strong precedent with enduring ties of India, has been severed. So Bangladesh today is in the cusp of a turbulence. But you have to look at it a little more dispassionately. I personally feel that even if you develop fantastically, but if there is a democratic deficit, you have a serious problem in hand. So one of the things that we say in economics, that is development a guarantee for stability? The answer is invariably not necessarily, because unless you have a very stable democracy, unless you ensure that your election processes are fair, you don't rig the elections, you also do not practice very authoritarian ways, you don't be ruthless with your opponents, particularly the killing of very innocent students, so peaceful students, about 300 plus. So that really puts a very huge question mark about the credibility of the past president. So let me hope in conclusion that we today have Muhammad Yunus in the interim government. I hope sanity would return to Bangladesh. But more importantly, what is really important is that it is possible to have both democracy and also development. So that's an extremely important thought for me, because I must mention in conclusion that while Bangladesh has been doing very well, but post the pandemic, post 2019, the latest data shows that about 30 million people are jobless today in Bangladesh. The foreign exchange reserves have come down by about 44%, and Taka has been depreciated by almost 22% from 2019. Compared to that, if you see India, we have almost come to pre-pandemic level. Our foreign exchange reserves are doing better. So in comparison, Bangladesh, while it had surged ahead, as I mentioned, in some of the human development indicators, and have done well in textiles. So there are also quite a few economic concerns that Bangladesh has grappled with. So the way forward, I have more learned friends to cogitate on the diplomatic and the strategic dimension. So in conclusion, I would like to mention that any bilateral ties must be, predicated on mutual respect for human rights and democratic norms. And Jagdish Bhagwati, one of his most wonderful books, he writes on Trans to the Destiny, a wonderful book. So he says that India may not grow as much as China. This was what he was writing before 2013. But he says that we will grow surely and steadily. So it's important that it is not necessary to have an autocratic regime to grow well. So it is more important that you have steady growth and you put your democratic institutions in place. And that is how the bilateral ties between India and Bangladesh as sharing a democratic platform that can be discharged. And both of us can gain humongously out of our exchange of ideas, culture, trade, and more importantly, the cultural underpinnings which festune both the countries. Thank you very much.
Very good, very good. Well said.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Now I'll request Maulia sir to talk about the diplomatic angle, like how the India and Bangladesh relation is going to be in the future or now after this situation, because we have a close relationship with Bangladesh. We see in the South Asian region, it is only like Bangladesh is one of the important country who favor India in all situation, and Sheikh Hasina is one of the close friend of our Prime Minister. So after this crisis, how the India-Bangladesh relation is going to be in future?
I'll be
Thank
there,
you.
with apology. I'll be there for your lecture for about 10 minutes, and then I listen to you on 13th in full. So I'll be there for about 10 minutes. Okay. Sorry, Maulia.
So before Professor Mishra vanishes from the scene, let me
I'm not
congratulate
vanishing.
let me congratulate him for his very brilliant analysis of the economic relations and his interesting thesis on democracy and development going together, which is absolutely correct. But I would again counter him by saying that it is not happening in India like that. India's democratic deficit or so-called electoral autocracy, and on one hand, on the other hand, fantastic growth. The growth is on the back of various other factors, except bridging the huge inequality gap in India. So democracy does not necessarily translate into bringing in a sane society. But that apart, now let me come to Bangladesh. From the politico-diplomatic point of view, well, I have had some informal discussions with my colleagues in the Foreign Office. And let me share my thoughts on this, because that you may not get from any book at this moment or any report now. So I would like you to listen carefully to what I say and maybe take a note of what is going on now. What I understand is that, first of all, India was completely unprepared for this development. India was taken by complete surprise by this sudden change of development, and we had no connect with the ground at all. In fact, this crisis burst out on the 1st of July, if you recall. I mean, in June itself, there was this Supreme Court decision to reinstate this 30% quota for government jobs. And it was reinstated by the Supreme Court in June, and there was a violent outburst among the students. As Professor Mishra also pointed out, there was tremendous joblessness, and there was a lot of frustration among the students who have really been the vanguard of this movement, what they say the people's power or students' power, which has led this movement over the last month and a half. They have suffered a lot of trials and tribulations, including clashes with the police, where there have been nearly 400 casualties. I think the latest count is about 450 casualties among the students itself. But the students are a heterogeneous group. They are not only the students from universities, but there are some leftist elements also. There are some Awami League cadres also. So they are all mixed up, and they're all fighting for the cause of restoration of democracy in different ways. And therefore, these students now want a constitution which is secular, not communal. Now, interestingly, there is another part, which is the radical part, or the extreme right part in this movement, which is led by the Jamaat-e-Islami. Now, Jamaat in Bangladesh came up in 1941 with direct links with Pakistan. And Pakistan was not born then. It was still a part of India. Yet Jamaat-e-Islami had chapters in various parts of India, including a very heavy chapter in then part of Pakistan, which later on became very direct. So now you have Jamaat-e-Islami, who's also among these groups now, and the BNP, of course, Khalida Zia's party, which had been in the past held power alternately with Awami League, directed by Sheikh Hasina, who's now in India for indefinite period. We don't know when she will go leave India and where she will go, but India has given her shelter. India had given her shelter in the past also for 6 years after this 1975 violent coup against Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and his entire family was exterminated at that time. And soon after that, at that time, Sheikh Hasina and her sister were abroad. They were in Europe, and they came back to India, and they lived in India for 6 years until 1981, and they returned to Bangladesh. And thereafter, she took active part in politics. She was earlier a student, and then she transformed herself into a political leader, built up cadres. Awami League was already there, so she mobilized her cadres, and then power has alternated between Awami League and Khalida Zia's party, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, BNP. BNP has always allied itself with the Jamaat. So you have on one side a secular formation in the form of Awami League, and the other side a kind of communally formed coalition government, BNP and Jamaat, and a few other communal groups also, who are rabidly pro-Pakistan and you can say to some extent anti-India. This has been going on, but since 2009, there has been some kind of stability in the sense that Sheikh Hasina came to power in the elections of 2008 and 2009, January, she took office. And from then until now, which is 5th August, she was in power. So for 15 years, she enjoyed power over 4 consecutive elections. Of course, these elections were heavily controversial, and there was the opposition had boycotted this election. The last election was completely boycotted by the BNP and the Jamaat, and no other parties participated. And it was some kind of a hollow election where the Awami League was the only party, and Sheikh Hasina was the only candidate, and she won. And she won against very strident, criticism of the US and UK governments, that there has been a series of malpractices in these elections. So these elections are dubious elections. We don't take into account. India, now comes the role of India. India has been a steadfast friend of Bangladesh, as Professor Mishra pointed out. But this friendship has been more at a leadership level, I would say, from the political point of view, from the diplomatic point of view, since 2009 in particular, both with our previous NDA, our Congress-led coalition government and the Modi-led Modi government, we have supported Khalida as Sheikh Hasina completely. In other words, we had put all our eggs in Sheikh Hasina's basket, to the exclusion of having any kind of contact with any other social formation or civil society groups or students or other communities. But these have now grouped together to bring about this so-called Bangla uprising, or as they say, the Bangla Spring, which has come, which has had led to this regime change between in a completely different scenario now. And today there is a very, very strong feeling, not only against Awami League cadres, but also people who are supporting the Awami League, mostly Indians and mostly Hindus. Now, you would recall that out of 170 million Bangladeshi population, you have 8%, who are Hindu population, minorities. And they have an umbrella coalition government, which comprises, the omnibus council of Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, things like that. And they are now the targets of this new group which has come up. The interesting part is, while the students led the protest movement and it grew up and swelled and became a nationwide protest movement, it has now been, in a way, I wouldn't say hijacked, but certainly being led on the side by these communal radical elements like the Jamaat. That is a very potent danger for us, because Jamaat has been a out and out pro-Pakistan formation. And now I come to the the recent development of Muhammad Yunus being chosen as the head of this interim government. He's a so-called caretaker prime minister and a technocrat. And in times like this, I think a technocrat suits the bill better than a political person. So I think he's quite appropriate to take on the mantle of leadership at this very critical moment for Bangladesh. But let us see his background. Professor Mishra, of course, recalled his excellent meeting with Professor Yunus. But Professor Yunus is not known to have much of sympathy for India's political system, because he's out and out a secular person, and he believes in secularism. He believes in democracy. He has a very clean image. Of course, he was jailed. He was, on trumped-up charges by the Hasina government in January this year, and he was put in jail. But he escaped that. He escaped that, and he fled to Europe. And now he comes from Paris, where he was associated with the Paris Olympics for some time, and he has taken a flight out of Paris and reached Dhaka and taken over as the 17-member interim government, including him. That is Yunus plus 16 other members. Now, if you see the composition of this interim government, it is interesting that almost the majority of the cabinet ministers now are from the BNP camp. In fact, the army had convened a consultation session the day after Hasina was made to flee the country. That was 5th August, where she had to leave her residence, Banga Bhavan, when the residence was stormed by these agitating protesters. And the army chief, Waqaruzzaman, he was the key man. And he and other service chiefs, she had a meeting with them, with her security also, and they all advised her to leave the country, because it would have been dangerous for her life at that time, because people were on a rampage outside her. And it was in these circumstances that she was flown out of Dhaka through a aircraft, transport carrier, and landed at Hindon Air Base near Delhi, Ghaziabad. So that was that story. But then now this interim government is composed majority of BNP elements, and BNP elements will invariably come with Jamaat. So if there is an election, which is very likely because there is a demand for new elections, and the task before this interim government is threefold. One is to bring back, restore law and order, call for all violence to settle down, and then people to come back to normalcy. That is the number one challenge. The second challenge is get the army to the barracks, because Bangladesh, unlike India, has been ruled by the military also for several periods. And you recall Muhammad Ershad, who also he had mounted against Khalida Zia's husband, ousted him in a deadly coup. And then after that, she took up the mantle of leadership of the BNP. So there has been a history of military coups. And it was interesting when President Shahabuddin of Bangladesh was making his announcement to the nation after Hasina's departure. They were the three chiefs, the Army, Air Force, and Navy chiefs standing behind him. You don't see such visuals in a democracy. You won't see Modi making an announcement with the three army chiefs of three services standing behind. So we are not that kind of a system, unlike Bangladesh. So the army would play definitely a prominent role. So the biggest challenge for the interim government is to send the army back to the barracks. Because unless the army goes back to the barracks, democracy in the real sense cannot be restored. And the third is, of course, which General Atanu will definitely highlight, is bringing security on our borders and to stop this refugee influx, because there could be a huge influx of refugees, not only Hindu refugees, but possibly also Rohingya refugees, because now the border between Myanmar and Bangladesh is also quite porous. And so there is a real threat of various militant groups being supported by the new government, and they will be pushed inside the border. So I understand the MHA has formed a committee now to look after this particular thing, and General Atanu will go into detailing that. But to put it back in perspective, this is the state of things where India has lost a very solid friend, a very solid ally, and it is, I look at it as a no comeback. Back to status quo ante is not possible, because I don't think Sheikh Hasina would have a chance, even if Hassan, who's based in US, Sajib Wajid, he says that his mother will be back and she'll come back to politics. But that is not a very likely scenario in this present. Yeah, I'll answer your question. Don't worry. In fact, during my talk only, I'm answering your question. Whereas the son of Khaleda Zia, who lives in London, he's been activating the BNP cadres, Tariq Anwar. Now, Tariq Anwar has been sending several messages to BNP cadres to activate the cadres and to prepare for the coming elections. So Tariq Anwar is out and out anti-India person, and he has catalyzed this anti-India sentiment among the people through his regular broadcasts from London. And he's waiting for an opportunity when he'll come. Surely enough, when elections will be declared, as they say that they've given a 90-day time frame for new elections to come, BNP will be a major stakeholder in the election process, and Jamaat and other communal groups will join together, and that will be terribly, terribly adverse to India's position and have a tremendous impact on India in terms of our continuation of our policy of supporting the government in Dhaka. What would be our options then? You would ask a very simple question: what would be our options at this moment? Because we were caught unawares, it came as a big jolt to our policymakers. In fact, I understand that when the first news came that the Bangladesh government is asking for flight clearance for Sheikh Hasina's aircraft, we were completely taken by some kind of a shock and awe. We were completely unawares why this flight clearance is needed. We didn't have a clue as to why this flight clearance was needed, because just 2 weeks back, in mid-June, she was there on a state visit to Delhi. In fact, hers was the first bilateral state visit to India after Mr. Modi came to power for the third time. So why would she come back again? So we had no clue as to what was going on. Why was she coming back? And then things unraveled. And then we got into the picture. Our EM gave a statement in the parliament, and then followed by his briefing with the opposition leaders, where India gave a very matter-of-fact statement without making any analysis or any such thing. There was no admission of India's, any kind of lack of information about what was going on in these Jaishankar's addresses. So there has been a setback, definite setback, not only for the Foreign Office, but for Modi himself. because I think Modi had been a great personal friend of Hasina. And in fact, since the time Hasina has been power in Dhaka, and it has been very much coterminous with Modi's prime ministership in India. So both the leaders have pulled on a great chemistry between them. But that has been now a handicap for India, because you have lost your contact in the grassroots. You have lost your contact with civil society bodies. So you do not know what the ground situation is. And unfortunately, our mission in Dhaka and our assistant commissions in 5 other places in Dhaka, in Bangladesh, had been left out of the loop. Only, when this consultation thing happened, our High Commissioner Pranay Verma, he's a young IFS officer. He has not much experience in this complicated scenario. He was there, present along with other diplomats from other countries. He may have got a listening brief from Delhi. But that apart, he wouldn't have provided much inputs to the Foreign Office in Delhi about what had been going on before. So we were in a way caught in the lurch because of this, and it has had a tremendous impact on us. Now look at it. Maldives had happened only recently when there was a regime change. We had again put all our eggs in the Soli basket. Ibrahim Soli, who was the previous president. And now with the change in the government, when Muizu came to power, he again has kicked that campaign, India Out campaign, and then he said now all the Indian defense personnel will have to quit the country. That became a campaign theme for him, and he worked through that, and he succeeded. He became the new president of Maldives. So this is again a kind of a repeat situation of Maldives, in my view, where there's a very strong, India Out campaign, which is happening there in Bangladesh. So how long will this campaign go on, and how India could be able to douse the fires which is raging all over the country? That's a very, very pertinent question to be answered, to which I think most of analysts, as I have been checking through our media also, has been saying that perhaps there is not much that India can do at this moment, because all the moves in Bangladesh now are against India. There is a tremendous and that has been having a fallout in terms of attacks on Hindu homes, Hindu temples. Of course, they are saying that even the Bangladeshi students are guarding the temples, but there are different narratives going on. So one shouldn't believe much about certain narratives which even could be fueling pro-Hindu sentiments within India. There is another gang also. That's a very interesting development. In India, there are stories floating around that how Hindus are being killed in huge numbers and how Hindu temples are being attacked. And so there is a backlash now. But be careful. Don't always go through these narratives, because you have to have your mind firmly on the ground to understand what's going on. Yes, it has been a student uprising. Yes, there have been certain radical elements who have piggy-rided on the back of the students and have come to take a share in the evolving scenario. But India has to do its own bit now. There's a big challenge for India, and I think this is the biggest challenge which India could have faced in the Modi's since he became the prime minister to Modi, is a personal, I think, setback to Modi, and that could have tremendous repercussions on our relations with Bangladesh, because Bangladesh is not only our neighbor, but our, I would say, in terms of our trade, in terms of our investments, in terms of our interactions, it has been the most important neighbor for us, and vice versa. India has been the most important neighbor for Bangladesh also. As Professor Mishra said, we share the largest border, land border with Bangladesh, of 4,090 kilometers long, 96 kilometers. So it girds around 5 very, very volatile and security conscious states in the northeast area. So the future is extremely uncertain at this moment. I just don't want to present a rosy picture of what is going to happen, but the impact has been very, very severe. Now, let me just end my saying with two external powers who are in the shadows. One is, of course, China. And if you recall, soon after Hasina visited Delhi, she, the next month, I think it was July 8 to 10, that she was in Beijing. And she met with Xi, the Chinese president. And but unfortunately, that visit was cut short. It was supposed to be a 4-day visit. It was cut short by a day. Hasina did not like some kind of the Chinese commitment was for giving her $5 billion as loan assistance. Instead, they just gave a commitment of 100 million US dollars, which Hasina felt was a big letdown. So she alleged that there was not much of protocol for her and all that. But the real point is she had gone to China with again, kind of a basket, so that China provides some assistance to her, and she could play perhaps the China card with India, because India was also that time negotiating with Bangladesh over the Tista river agreement, and it was in the coming to the final stage of of the agreement being signed, whereas Bengal has been virulent that they have not been a part of the tripartite agreement where they should have been, because rivers fall under the domain of state category. So Bengal rightfully has the right to protest that they were not part. It's a political question why Bengal was omitted when Modi was talking to Hasina. But that apart, China is an important factor now and in future, because BNP has solid links with China. And if BNP comes back to power, which is more or less a certainty, it will China again, which will have a major stake in Bangladesh. They are the second largest trading partner after India. Their investments are not as huge as India, but they could increase it. China has been putting money in the southern part of Bangladesh. I think General Atanu will highlight on that. Why southern part? Because southern part, they have a lot of fertile land, and 30% of fertile land belongs in this last part, the southern part, which is close to the Bay of Bengal, and it is always comes prone to various natural calamities. So that needs a lot of infrastructure development there, and China is coming in a big way towards it. But behind that could be China's intention to grab a few ports, because it is studded with ports, small and big, and that could add to China's so-called garland of a necklace after it has got Sitwe in Thailand, in Myanmar, and then now they have got Hambantota in Sri Lanka and back again to Pakistan. So that would be an easy thing for China to get if BNP comes and China comes back. That again will have an impact on India, because India has been forever cagey about increasing Chinese influence in its neighborhood in South Asia. Now Maldives is gone, nearly Sri Lanka is gone, Bangladesh is about to go, Nepal has gone. Nepal has signed huge agreements with, and all these neighborhood countries, remember, they are all part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. So India has cause to feel threatened in its own neighborhood. So our so-called neighborhood first policy, which was announced with a lot of fanfare by Prime Minister Modi when he first came to power in 2015, yes. Was it 2014? Okay, when he came to power, that neighborhood first policy has been now thrown to the winds, because now the neighborhood looks like is becoming a little different neighborhood than what we had envisaged, what India had envisaged. So India's influence has been scuttled. But if you ask me a counter question, why did India allow this to happen? Why did we develop only one part of all these countries to the total seclusion of all other social groups? My answer would be that I think we had not read the tea leaves properly. We had not read the reading in the wind properly. And I think our estimates have gone hugely wrong that we will continue to enjoy Hasina's support and will continue to this thing. This kind of a situation happened over a period of a month and a half and took us completely by surprise. So the impact will be very, very heavy. And the last, point is US. Now, today I was reading an Indian Express column, very, very interesting column, which says that there could be an indirect US hand also for a regime change. Because it seems this guy called Donald Lu, who's the Assistant Secretary of South Asian Affairs, he's been coming to Dhaka quite often. And he's been having contacts with various BNP groups and other civil societies. So it is likely that if you connect the dots, and if you see how US was virulently critique of the 2024 elections, even the State Department also called that, Bangladesh should, look at the minorities and, respect for human rights and all that, the standard formulation, the Western formulation. And this Donald Lu, he could have been a mediator. He could have been a messenger from the US administration to the anti-India elements, perhaps like BNP and Jamaat and all that. So there is a kind of a scenario there built in. So you have now meddling of external powers. The situation within Bangladesh is extremely fluid. The caretaker government has just come in. Yunus has put 27 portfolios under his hand, which is a very, very difficult task for him. And just 2 portfolios go to 2 student leaders who led this so-called anti-discrimination student movement. So all the other portfolios have gone to Yunus and BNP people, and BNP meaning Jamaat also. So this is how I would conclude my assessment of the situation. But we have to be very, 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 we have to be very careful. We have to look at, rebuilding our contacts with the new regime, because India will still be indispensable to Bangladesh, because India is the closest neighbor to Bangladesh. They cannot afford to antagonize India, but we have to build on that period over a sustained period of time. Our missions in Bangladesh have to be more active than before, and we have to have more people-to-people links. We have to build links with the civil society, with the student groups, because student groups are still a secular formation. They have asked for a secular constitution. They have asked for the redrawing of the constitution. So we have hope in these groups, and perhaps we could mobilize these groups and have again get back to some kind of a semblance of normalcy in their attitude towards India. I think that would be India's biggest challenge at this moment. So here I would like to conclude my assessment. If you have any questions, I'd like to take it later, but over to General Atanu now for his security brief.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So now I'll request Major General Atanu Patnaik sir to give his thought on this issue, this Bangladesh unrest, and how it is going to affect our security and strategic point of view, how it is going to affect. Now we saw like all around, everyone is like an enemy to us. Like we lost our best friends, like Pakistan now, Bangladesh. Now similarly, we have similar situation in Maldives also, Nepal also. So how in this situation India should act to protect its own interest from security point of view? Someone has asked the string of wall, through string of wall, they try to encircle the whole India in the Indian Ocean region. So is it a growing concern for India's security point of view, also strategic point of view also? So what is your thought on this current situation? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Deepak. Being the last speaker in the sequence, a lot of ground has been covered by Professor Mishra and Dr. Malay, especially the backgrounders and the happenings in the diplomatic circles, the role of China, the possible role of United States. I remember one of the Brazilian presidents earlier had said that coups don't happen in the United States because there is no US embassy in Washington, D.C. So, since the Second World War, they have triggered series of coups all over the world. You can just go back about 10 odd years. The Arab Spring, which started in the North African region, spread right up to, it was halted in Syria. 2014, Ukraine. So the color revolutions that happened in Eastern Europe countries. US has a tremendous amount of expertise in triggering regime changes wherever they are not conducive to the interests of United States. And if you recollect, a few months back, sometimes in March, I think, Hasina had very uncharacteristically come out publicly to say that if I had placed a certain island, St. Martin Island is what she was referring to, which is at the tip of Bangladesh. If I had given it away, then my regime would have can continue smoothly. It was basically to build a military base in that island, which is about a 3 square kilometers patch, directly south of Chittagong. I saw a number of questions propping up. If you recollect, I think most of the students who were attending this today's session would have attended the last Saturday session. And if you recollect, I had said, I was mentioning that time when covering the neighborhood that fortunately, at least Bangladesh is with us. But I also said that with a cautionary note that as long as Sheikh Hasina is there, I didn't know that the scene will completely change in 48 hours. We spoke about it on Saturday, and by Monday evening, she was in India. Couple of factors. I saw one of the questions, so I'll address those questions alongside. Why India's, is it our bad foreign policy? We are surrounded by inimical regimes and even people, you will say, all around us. It is not a foreign policy change. You get caught in certain circumstances. A number of them, like in the Middle East, go back to what the British did. The partition of India and going back further in time when the partition of Bengal, for example, in 1905, holding of elections on religious basis, they carved out Muslim constituencies and Hindu constituencies separately in 1909. These are important because they sowed the seeds of division. The sectarian divide was built, divide and rule, whatever we can say that, to weaken the movement that was going on for independence of the country from the colonial powers, and this was planted long back. Even in 1947, the fact that Congress agreed to the partition, on religious basis, must be understood. It was a clear partition on religious basis. There was no other basis. A Muslim homeland of Pakistan, and what is the definition of the rest? That has been ambiguous. What was the rest? The one part ceded became Pakistan, East Pakistan, and Pakistan. East Pakistan was still called the East Bengal for a while, and became East Pakistan, I think, in 1955. So it was based on division, based on religion. So religion has a very important, is a very important element in this whole power play and whatever is happening around. It's another matter that it is religion which is also playing out in the in his home country in Great Britain now, where passions are inflamed and there are a lot of riots, and definitely the Muslim migrants and their role and how they voted en bloc for Labour in the past elections is playing a very important role. So religion is one factor. A second factor is China. We had discussed China in detail earlier. China needed portion of Aksai Chin because it had to connect Tibet with Xinjiang, the Ocean Express Highway, which is not very important now, but it was very critical at that time. So they had the highway. They built the highway without India getting to know. And it was possibly, they were genuine in trying to negotiate with China, with India to settle the borders. We discussed that in detail. We did not do it at that time. We were economically at the same level sometimes in 1978. But today it is a 6 times larger economy. It has more money to spare. So it has embarked on an ambitious BRI project. Dr. Malay brought out, Dr. Misra also brought out, Professor Misra also brought out that issue, that it's building a strategic, the China-Pakistan economic corridor in the West. It is trying to get over the Malacca dilemma, because, it has huge energy dependency on the Middle East, and it somehow wants to get over a situation where the, US blockade of the Malacca Strait can endanger its security and its industry. So it has been, there is one segment which is being developed in the Western Myanmar area in Kakchufu, and there is one which is being developed in the CPEC corridor to border. All these have been factors which have influenced how China has been, the string of pearls, Haman Tota in Sri Lanka, for example, border in there, and they have been trying to get a handle on Chittagong. From a purely security point of view, one of the reasons why India has lacked adequate influence in the neighborhood is that we did not have a indigenous defense industry capability. I'll give a small example of Sri Lanka. We didn't produce anything by ourselves, so there was little we could supply to them. And when they decided to take on the LTT head-on, much after India withdrew in 87, 89, in the events leading up to 2009, US had ships with containers full of arms. And, even before they could demand, they would push them. Now, when a country gets this kind of support, aren't they morally obliged to be, be close to their supporter, their mentor? So, economic muscle is there, and China built up a huge defense industry. So, almost like 60% of Pakistan's equipment, ammunition equipment, their sensors, their aircrafts are of Chinese origin. In a similar manner, in Bangladesh, they have the Type 59, Type 69 tanks. They have got the F-7 aircrafts, the J-7 aircrafts. They got submarines, 2 submarines in a deal in 2017. So all these require training, all these require infrastructure, all these require continuous engagement. So there are deep tentacles inside the security setup in Bangladesh from the Chinese. The Indian defense industry is only just about coming up in a recent. It's only now that we are talking about 2 lakh crores of export, but we're way off still. We still don't manufacture aircraft, for example, aircraft engine, which is a very critical element of development of our fighter program, which is facing a number of setbacks because we do not have the technology. Hopefully, when the transport aircrafts, which we have signed with the agreement we signed with the United States, when they do indigenous production in India in collaboration with the Tatas, we will possibly gain a lot of access to technology, just the way Chinese stole or absorbed and developed on technology through the years from 1978 till date. So lack of a strong indigenous defense manufacturing industry has been one of the key factors why we have not been able to adequately spread out tentacles in the neighborhood. But the first factor remains religion, for which India was divided. Jamaat, for example. Jamaat, I mean, everybody, we fought a very, one of the most brilliant wars was fought in the liberation of Bangladesh, lasting just 13 days. And despite threats from the United States, despite US moving its 7th fleet into the Bay of Bengal and siding with the military dictatorship of Pakistan, and that says much about how they value democracy. Despite all this, we fought a brilliant war. We took 93,000 prisoners, and yet we didn't settle our borders with Pakistan. So there have been some failures in terms of in our way we strategize, the way we look at the situation. This coup, as Dr. Mada just brought out, took us by complete surprise. It happened just 10 years back. In 2012 February, when the Maldives government, President Nasheed's government was overthrown, we were taken by surprise even then. And we couldn't react. And pro-China dispensation came in, helped by the ISI. Now, you cannot take away the fact that Maldives is a hardcore Sunni country, and ISI has got deep inroads. Jamaat has got deep inroads. I mean, they collaborated with Muslim League. They collaborated with the Pakistan army during the 71 Liberation War. And therefore, most of its leaders, including Abdul Qadir Mullah and all, took shelter in Pakistan after the war, after 71 war. So it is not as if the entire Bangladesh, population and political dispensations were in favor of liberation of separation of Bangladesh from the East Pakistan from the mainland Pakistan. Now, if these people have collaborated with the Pakistan army, have gone to Pakistan immediately after the liberation of Bangladesh, what will be their attitude towards India? I mean, does it require a second guessing? Now, look at the background of BNP. BNP was formed in 77 after Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and his family was butchered in a coup on 15th August 1975. I don't know how they very beautifully do these dates. 15th August was a date for killing Mujibur Rahman. And 5th August is a date for Sheikh Hasina's overthrow, which coincides with possibly this is the 5th or 6th year. 5th August we repealed, I think, the Article 370. We thought we stabilized our northern borders only to see a few years later our eastern flank open up. Now coming to the security aspect, as I said, China has got deep inroads into the defense forces of Bangladesh by virtue of its supply of tanks, aircrafts, surveillance systems, missiles, submarines, surface ships, operation of ports, modernization of airports. So in every sphere, you have Chinese there. But what exactly role China played in this coup is not very clear so far, because from Sheikh Hasina's pronunciations, as I said 2-3 months back, what she was alluding to was perhaps the United States, which had earlier last year, threatened them that you must hold your elections in a free and fair manner, and such like things. Democracy propped up conveniently, and free and fair election is another thing. It's another matter that since 2000, most of the elections in the United States themselves are under cloud. Trump still doesn't recognize that Biden was elected. So this is a country which is lecturing other countries in the world how to hold elections. Now they have just declared that Venezuela elections are null and void. Maduro didn't get elected, and they have declared the other guy, the opposition, as the legitimate president. They did that 4 years back also. Nothing came out of it. And so they have been pursuing their agenda of countering Chinese, basically. So they wanted the St. Martin Island as a airbase. There is also the angle of which Sheikh Hasina herself has said. So it's not a creation, it's not a illusion of attempts to create a Christian state in the northeast region. Means taking portions of Myanmar, portions of the Chittagong area belt of Bangladesh, and Mizoram, and parts of Manipur. Don't forget to go back 2 years, the events that led to the turmoil in Manipur. Now, without going to the religious angle, you cannot understand Manipur. By some obscure land regulations which were imposed some 150 years back, I think in 1873 or something like that, during the British time, the Meiteis cannot buy land in the tribal areas. Meiteis who are in India got independence. Meiteis who are not included in the list of scheduled tribes by Nehru, despite delegations telling him the ground situation. So that, if you discuss Manipur in detail, you will come to know that about 53% of Manipur's population lives in 10% of the land. And because of the porous FMR region, free movement regime of that 1600 kilometers of Indo-Myanmar border, the Kukis and the Jo tribes, basically, who populate the Chin Hills, they are free to come, and most of them have converted to Christianity. Mizoram is, of course, completely Christian country. And it was shocking, about 6 months back, the Mizoram Home Minister giving a statement that we do not recognize the borders imposed by India, and we will welcome the Zo people into our state. Foreign policy is exclusive preserve of the union government, and such statements shouldn't have come. But what Sheikh Hasina alluded to, that, and there is possibly, obviously, US hand, if, like East Timor, for example, in Indonesia, which was created in 2006, why should we roll it out? And a foreign head of government, Sheikh Hasina, didn't make that pronunciation without some kind of solid intelligence input. So there was this angle of, say, a bit of creation of a possibly trying to create a Christian state, and taking of this Chittagong port, building a airbase, military base in St. Martin Island. So they connect one set of dots. The other set of dots is the string of pearls which China has been laying around India, and the fact that China is able to influence governments through money, as well as through aid through BRA projects, as well as through military hardware. That is a reality. And any country will try to beat a competitor through whatever means available at its disposal. So this is something we can only counter through sustained growth over time. And we have to face these challenges. In terms of Bangladesh proper, this 4,096 kilometers, major portion of this has been fenced. There is patrolling, but there are problems on ground. Some of you may recall or be aware of it. The BSF, I do not want to question the credibility of the organization as such, but there is extreme amount of corruption at the posts. So if one person is pushed back, 4 persons enter. And a lot of it is facilitated by there is a entire syndicate of people in West Bengal, in parts of Assam, who facilitate, in parts of Tripura, who facilitate this crossover. Creating Aadhaar cards, giving them ration cards, giving them false identities, and you will see them, rowing, call them rowing, yes, call them Bangladeshis, whatever. You will see them in the streets of Bhubaneswar. You'll see, I met them in far place in Chandigarh. You can make out that these are Bangladeshis. The way they speak, the way they tie the gamcha, you know that he's not a local. So how are they coming in? They're coming in because despite building the fence, and it's manned by people, and these people over a period of time, whatever arrangements, they're prone to corruption. I remember a BSF commandant who was commanding one of the frontline battalions along the West Bengal Bangladesh border. He was caught in Kerala with some 36 lakhs in 2 bags, and he was arrested as soon as he got off the train. It happened about maybe 6-8 years back. But this is a problem. So it is porous, and with Jamaat and BNP, gaining upper hand. BNP was born out of liquidation of Sheikh Mujibur's family, and so Jio Rahman, and now his Begum Khalida. So it is born out of anti-India sentiments. So it will not change, as Dr. Malav has brought out. His son, her son, who is based in London, has been very, very vocal anti-Indian. Jamaat has been very, very vocal anti-Indian. So ISI has made big role. Always had inroads into Bangladesh, even during the war, even after the war, because after 75 it left. Jamaat came back, and they opened. I think they have about 4 lakh or so Qawmi madrasas in which the Jamaat operates. They have millions, I think more about 5 million students who study in these madrasas. And what do these produce? What do they produce? They produce young people who cannot be employed in any job sector. So they become foot soldiers of Jamaat. To blame this on Sheikh Hasina is not correct. In the past, say, decade and a half till 2020, when the COVID struck, Bangladesh was going at a very rapid pace. Yes, it was based on textile industry mostly. But then, they identified one core industry, and they developed the skills, they developed the ecosystem. They grew at almost 7% per annum through this period. And at one stage, overtook India in terms of per capita GDP. And this was it was generating employment. It doesn't matter if it belonged to one particular party or the other. The jobs are going to the youth of Bangladesh. Now, look at the trail of events of the past 2 months. Sheikh Hasina's government has nothing to do with the restoration of this 30% quota. Now, 30% quota is identified with Awami League because it is for the freedom fighters of Bangladesh, and the wards, the sons and descendants of the people who took part in that freedom struggle. And the BNP and Jamaat are against that freedom struggle. They are against the creation of Bangladesh. They were, and they remain so. They may not take as much. So, with a student population, you can call them Talibans for all I care, because they're as good as that. Students who have come out, almost 60% of Bangladesh population is aged between 16 to 18 years. Almost 60%. Now they don't get jobs. The industry beyond the textile sector has not developed. But textile sector itself, during COVID faced very difficult times because the entire global supply chain demand for textile garments suddenly evaporated because all movement came to a standstill. It came under great pressure. There was almost 40% devaluation of the taka. It had to go to IMF in 2022 from very shining example of economy in the South Asia to bankruptcy. something which for different regions has happened, in Sri Lanka because of their huge debt servicing problem with China. But circumstances are, you can correlate with certain global events. So now, with absolute anti-India formulation having come into power, Muhammad Yunus, for being a Nobel laureate and all, is fine. But you look at, take a deep dive into Muhammad Yunus and his Grameen Bank and all. If Grameen Bank was so successful, then, why should only garment industry, which was propped up, which was built up after Sheikh Hasina came to power, be the only kind of thriving sector in the Bangladesh economy? Their villages, the Grameen Bank, if it was successful in terms of developing micro business, that should have happened. But the suspicion is that Grameen Bank model or whatever was used by certain forces in the West, Ford Foundation, for example, to pump in a lot of money and build influence. Muhammad Yunus was propped up. All Nobel laureates haven't done very noble work in their fields, and some of them have been awarded the Nobel or Maxis Award by the Philippines government for purely political investment, and that is kind of activated at a certain time. Dr. Mullah very rightly brought out that he doesn't have a good feeling about India, Muhammad Yunus. And in one of the statements he just mentioned, I think from the airport itself, he said that departure of Sheikh Hasina is like the second independence for Bangladesh. Okay, this is the second independence for Bangladesh, but which was the first independence? Is he referring to 16 December 71 or is he referring to 15th August 47? So are we liberating Bangladesh from the so-called dictatorial regime of Sheikh Hasina, or are we pushing Bangladesh back into its previous avatar of East Pakistan? Because going forward, all I can see is that we will face the same kind of problems that led up to the 71 war. There will be massive amount of attempts to migrate into population migrating into India. It doesn't have to be Hindus. It will be all kinds of people, Hindus, Muslims, both. Because there is very little in the economy now. The central bank, Bangladesh Bank chairman, governor, it's 5 deputy governors, they have all resigned. So I think 450 out of the 650 police stations, the police have vanished. Sector after sector, segment after segment of the apparatus, governing apparatus is being demolished. We cannot rule out that it will, become a situation like it happens in northern Iraq or in Syria, eastern Syria, lawlessness. And if that happens, which is a likely scenario, likely outcome, India has grave challenges. Our BSF special DG has been sent there as and the DG has also visited, and we're trying to secure the borders as much as possible. But remember, it's not out of context to say that we have governments like in West Bengal. Will it work in consonance with the government of India in checking infiltration, in checking illegal migration? So we have got, the government of India, its hands are full. Its hands are full. The infiltration has reduced on the Assamese borders, but it's just, it's a free flow in West Bengal. So how are you going to address that challenge? Bangladesh does not pose a military threat to India. Let's understand that. But the instability in this country of 170 million people can be extremely dangerous for our country. I mean, anarchy and chaos can simply spill over, and we already have within our country forces which are aligned with the powers that be who are driving such kind of regime changes in parts of the world, who would not like to see India grow because of so many other factors. For example, how India is kind of aligned with Russia in Ukraine. How much oil we buy from them. What is our stance in the whole scenario if the global economy witnesses de-dollarization? If the debt crisis in US with 35 trillion kind of implodes its economy, the whole dollar trading system which stabilizes the global trade might collapse, and there are very few alternatives. Very few alternatives. The Chinese, because of lack of trust, their currency doesn't gain so much of currency despite it being the second largest economy for all these years. Whereas yuan and euro still hold their ground. There's a lack of trust in the Chinese currency and acceptance of it. So if the de-dollarization happens, what will happen in our because the world economy has infused itself so much over the past years that it's very difficult to disengage for any country. For India, this regime change in Bangladesh completely changes the scenario. We'll take on questions, I suppose.
Okay, sir. So thank you so much, sir. So as you have clearly pointed out, due to this unrest, maybe many like migration will happen from Bangladesh to India side. So now from all side, from Kashmir side, Pakistan will infiltrate the people. Now Bangladesh side, through Bangladesh government or their supporter, they will infiltrate from the east side. Then similarly from Maldives and Sri Lanka, from all round now China and Pakistan, they will influence their like position and try to infiltrate to India and try to instabilize or to create disturbance in India scenario. So will you see it as a great security challenge for India, or maybe in future will it see that there will be, like you told about another situation like 1971 war situation maybe happen, because if many people will come to India and try to destabilize or try to create disturbance in future, something will be in the South Asia, particularly Indian region, it will be create many war-like situation.
I have a question for you, Atanu.
Sir.
You gave a brilliant exposition of the security scenario. I am in a dilemma actually. If it is true, though I still would like to believe that it could be conjectural also, that US has been heavily involved in this regime change. Let's believe that theory. But at the same time, you see, India is a steadfast partner of US. So they are changing a regime which they know will be anti-India. And India is a part of so many Western blocs like Quad, you just name it, so many other groups. And why would they do it? I mean, it is like stabbing India in the back, where India, on one hand, is ambivalent in terms of its support for Russia vis-a-vis Ukraine, in terms of its support for Israel vis-a-vis Palestine. Why would the US do that to finger India at this point? This is number one. Flowing out of this, I think this is my loud, guess, and you are a military expert, so you would enlighten the audience more. Let's see with this scenario in picture, not now, but maybe after you have a BNP Jamaat government coming into Bangladesh, and China has deeply entrenched into Bangladesh. China has deeply entrenched into other countries around the region. Do you feel yourself that there could be possibility of a low intensity warfare between China and India? Could there be a repeat of 1962? Because all the odds are now in favor of China in India's neighborhood. And China, as you know, Pakistan is just a vassal state of China. You well know that. And all the arms are lifted to from China to Pakistan. Could there be a strangulation on our northern frontier from the west and the east at this point of time? Because India is going to be in a very, very delicate security situation, and we may not be fully prepared. And it could be a repeat of the 1962 war scenario. So what are your views on this? I'd like to know, and maybe our students can be enlightened also.
Sir, so the first point is about why should India be acting against, US be acting against Indian interests when it is trying to partner India into its larger axis against China. It's a member of the Quad. We have a very effective diaspora, Indian diaspora in the United States, very successful, brilliant. Now, even in terms of political power also, their presence is being felt, however indirectly, you know. So why should it act? Well, our foreign policy, as I see, sir, you would understand better, but much better. But in the past decade or so, has undergone a lot of change, and we are trying to manage contradictions within the best interest of the country, so that we are able to economically grow stronger. You know, if you look at China from 1978 to 2008, in 30 years they rarely raised their head against anything. They would quietly suffer, even in terms of almost humiliating conditions at times, or severe criticism in various world forums, in UN and other organizations, and still duck, because they wanted to grow economically, become strong, and whatever developments you find in South China Sea and vis-a-vis Taiwan, etc., have happened after that, after having reached a certain critical, having gathered critical economic strength. It's only after Xi Jinping came in 2012 that was a change of policy, and now it is able to assert itself. India is not in a position to assert itself. It may become the 5th largest economy, but per capita it is 1/6 of China and 1/30th or 1/30th of United States. So we are not anywhere in terms of that way, in terms of as an economy. If we have to grow, we have to manage our relations with major players in the world. We need energy, and when you got an offer of a cheap energy, and we cannot go back on our the incidents of 1971. If the Russian submarine fleet had not sailed into the Indian waters, it would have been difficult to stop the 7th Fleet, or for the 7th Fleet to halt on its own, and for us to progress our operations toward Dhaka, which culminated on 6th of December. So Russia, which has been a very steadfast partner in our history, in terms of defense dependency, we may have spread our. We are still importing large quantum, but it's now gone. To spread. We are importing aircraft from France. We are importing transport aircraft from the United States. We are importing certain missiles from the United States, certain drones from Israel. So we have spread our imports from all over. Now, if this our source of our defense from Russia and from the United States, and they engage in a war in Ukraine, pursuit of the position of India. We have taken more of an one stand to say that yes, this is not the era of war. That's what the Prime Minister said. But yet we must preserve our interests. Our interest was to make sure that our consumer gets its energy and we are not hit by inflation. India is growing at 7%, the fastest growing economy in the world for a couple of years now. And energy is a big factor in it. Why the German industry has gone down and why Germany is facing stagflation is because of energy, escalating energy costs for the entire Europe and specifically for Germany, which was the pipelines having been severed. Now US is upset. US didn't send an ambassador under Biden for 19 months to India. Whatever may be the domestic reasons, the fact is this. So, the evangelical pursuits of certain organizations in the United States cannot be ignored. This should not be ignored. Northeast is a prime example. While as Chief of Staff Northeast, I have seen actual advertisements in newspaper where they talk about collaboration between government of Nagaland and government of South Korea. South Korea, is one of the countries which is actively, the evangelists are very active in South Korea. They have a lot of missionaries world over, and they have, in fact, some of the most extreme tenets of Christianity there in South Korea, and they are collaborating. How did the tribes of Northeast become Christians? Was it only British missionaries or were they American missionaries? Why it is difficult to ask such questions in the first place? The policy may have been British, but most of the missionaries came from the United States. I have myself met a number of them in Dimapur airport, and I've asked the local people. And they talk about the flow of funds in their big suitcases. Americans who come, spend 2-3 months and go back. So this has been active, and despite overtly with India, they have been cooperating. We are a member of the Quad, but why Quad is not getting any traction as such, meaningful traction? Why did they go in for AUKUS, for example, after formulation of Quad? So US still considers Pakistan as a greater asset to its strategic outreach than they consider India. That's the fact of life. During my 2 long trainings in United States, one in 97 and one in 2014, I've encountered a number of Pakistani officers who have done multiple training missions there and are completely familiar with the hierarchy of the US military. I went and in 2014 to the National Defense University, and I found the Pakistani Brigadier General was absolutely bum chum with some of the top guys in Pentagon. So democracy can go to hell. They consider Pakistan as a big asset in their power play to maintain their dominance over the global affairs. That's the fact of life. Now coming to the very interesting question you asked, sir, about how China has successfully now completed its string of pearls around or the tight noose around India, and can a 62 happen? So the background of 62, as I said in the last session in last Saturday, was access, passes and depth. Access means they wanted Tibet, the Lhasa, to be connected to Kasgar, to that western highway which they had built. They had to protect that highway. So they needed the passes, and depth to that highway. Access, passes and depth was the critical reason why they had to occupy Aksai Chin. Now, the status of the 1913 agreement, or the nebulous position of that agreement. David Miliband having withdrawn, having publicly stated that no, it was wrong on our part to assume that China didn't have sovereignty over Tibet, and that Tibet was free to negotiate with British India. So, if such statements have come, they put the entire, framework of McMahon line into jeopardy. This has happened. These are the realities. But we must look at it that China made genuine efforts leading up to 62 to negotiate, settle the borders. That's a fact. The Soviet delegation, Chow and Lai's delegation, even much later in 1988 when Deng came and met Rajiv. So, leading to 62, they made a number of offers to, barter. They will recognize McMahon line and you give us Aksai Chin. In Aksai Chin, their claims surround 30, there's totals of about 38,000 square kilometers, out of which they're already in physical occupation of 36,000 square kilometers. And add another 5,000, which is the Sakjam Valley, which has been ceded by. But even in that agreement, 1963 agreement, they have mentioned, Chinese insisted to include that this ceding of this Sakjam Valley, 5,000 square kilometers, is subject to the final outcome of J&K and the settlement of Indo-China borders. So why do they need a war with? Can a war get them the territory of, say, Arunachal Pradesh without bidding them out altogether? What do they gain out of it? In 62, they went back. So ipso facto, they recognize, and they have only brought up the Arunachal as, they claimed Arunachal as part of southern Tibet only around 2006 or so. Not before that. They recognized India absorbing Sikkim in 75. So to ascribe any inimical intentions, one-sided on and blame it on China may not be very right. We have also made mistakes in demarcating our borders, in unilaterally publishing maps in 1954, 52. Maps dating 1950 shows them in dotted lines to be demarcated, and suddenly we publish maps in you can call it as a cartographic invasion without settling borders, without negotiating with the parties. Someone was asking, like we gave shelter to Dalai Lama and triggered the 62 war, will giving shelter to Hasina trigger another war? As I said, Bangladesh will not pose a military threat to India, but it poses a huge security threat to India. Unbridled migration, illegal migrants into India can absolutely, you see the chaotic situation in West Bengal and in certain districts in Assam. Imagine that growing manifold. So it is going to create a security situation, and this can severely, alongside other factors, other players who are already embedded in India, can create chaos in the country. You cannot expect a neighbor of Syria to develop peacefully. Lebanon is a prime example where massive amount of Syrians, millions of Syrians are in Lebanon. And Lebanon has been completely destroyed. Country which was called, Beirut was called Paris of the East, is now up in flames, having been taken over by elements like Hezbollah. So anarchy in area with teeming young population, 170 million population, 60% below 18, is going to be tremendous. And with a regime which now comes in, you cannot say Muhammad Yunus is the regime, he is a figurehead. It's the BNP and Jamaat which will wield all the parts and will take directions from their mentors in the ISL. So I do not foresee a military offensive by China against India. Their priority one remains Taiwan. And they already have what they needed most. It's more of a muscle flexing than anything else.
So, sir, we'll take a few questions from the students as we have already crossed the almost 9:30 is going. So,
Yeah.
few questions. Sai, you can ask your question. Sai.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. Sir, thank you for this interactive session, and it was very knowledgeable for us. Sir, Malay sir, coming to like your question, so what my assumption is that, correct me, like Atanu sir and Malay sir. So basically, US doesn't want another China to be a region. So considering the young population and the productivity of India, and assuming that India will grow for next 30-35 years at the rate of 7 to 8%, and India is also close to China, also close to Russia, and has an independent foreign policy. So US doesn't want India to grow that much. It should have like as a friend, but not to as an independent and who can like check US in some phases. So US, I guess like for that reason, US doesn't want a like the surroundings of India to be like peaceful, and India can be like in this conflict like always. So coming to my question part, sir, like why you are always trying to get a certificate of democracy from US and UK, considering their past reputation and what we have like seen recently in the democratic process in both the countries. And my second question would be, by analyzing like little deeply, so it is evident that the Bangladesh situation is a outsider job, and most probably by US. So where a elected government is overthrown, sir, why it is not generally acknowledged this role of US, and why you are not acknowledging this? And we are saying it is a student protest and etc. etc. Where a foreign, like a person who is sitting outside is just hijacked and put in place of a elected government.
Yeah. So, Sai, your question is to Malay sir or Atanu sir?
Okay. You see, you asked, I think, two questions. Well, going back to my conjecture, I will answer your questions. India is at a loose end at this point of time, as very well brought out by General Atanu. India is in a tight corner. There's no doubt about it. There is a lot of pressure on India to conduct itself properly insofar as Bangladesh is concerned. Pressure mounted by China, pressure mounted by US, pressure mounted by Pakistan. All these states may not come together, but the cumulative pressure on India may lead to an implosion, with our own problems at hand, namely our economic problems, our tremendous economic inequities, our tremendous social capital deficits, our tremendous caste divides, etc., etc. Those could be taken advantage of. In other words, we are at a very, very weak spot. Generally, I mean, Bangladesh may have, created a little more problems for us, but as such, we have a lot of problems within us. My dilemma is, as I mentioned earlier also, should there be a conflictual situation with India in any way, who would come to our rescue? Which ally will be with us? We have no ally. In fact, we have consciously adopted a policy of so-called strategic autonomy. And to questions from the State Department say India has a freedom of choice. It can go with Russia, it can go with Israel, whatever India wants. But you cannot sustain strategic autonomy when your own system is in distress. You have to be a China. You have to have economic muscle. You have to have military heft to become a global power like China. You cannot be a Vishwa Guru, even if you proclaim 1,000 times. It's people will laugh at you, as they are. But thing is, at this point of time, we are in such a weak spot. I mean, globally, if you see the global power equations, how they are forming, I think our basket of choices is getting limited, in my view. Why would US do that? To my question, I have a a counter answer. The present administration, the Biden administration, I think Atanu alluded to that. The Biden administration is not favorably disposed towards the erosion of democracy in India. They are cut and throat Democrats, particularly Biden. And there were very strong cold vibes even in the last G7 summit in Italy because of that security angle of India's targeting Panun on US soil. That is just an alibi. That's just a ruse. Thing is to corner India. The Americans are well adept at playing that game, how to corner a country and get the most out of it. That kind of leverage they would like to exercise. My second point is that China is getting increasingly influential. At that time, the US would need India more as a buffer against China's expansion in this region, which the general policy of the US has been. Why is US trying to antagonize India at this point of time through its incursions within Sri Lanka or elsewhere? That is something very difficult for me to conjecture. But answering your questions generally, I would say that yes, a wartime scenario, I agree with him, is not very, very likely in the near future. But remember one thing, that Chinese have mounted attacks on us when they have thought that India is at its most vulnerable. This had happened in 1962. It may not happen now, because now we are more militarily prepared, we are more militarily advanced. But China has been engaged in salami slicing. As you all know, they have been occupying our territories surreptitiously. They still have an eye on Arunachal. Why? Because Arunachal could give them a gateway to Northeast, the vulnerable part of Northeast, and the Siliguri corridor, which is close to both Bangladesh as well as to Bhutan. Now that they have had some kind of an agreement with Bhutan, that particular portion is very much within their eyes, with China's eyes. So I don't discount the possibility of some kind of a skirmish, which may happen, if not now, but I mean, if you are left unguarded, unprepared. But should that happen, who comes to our rescue? Does Russia come to our rescue? I would say no. Why? Because Russia has now become a steadfast ally of China. There's no question about it. It's not a repeat of the 1917 war, and we cannot have a Indo-Soviet treaty now. It's not possible. USA? Will US come? I have my doubts, because US speaks a lot, but in the backside, it does other things which is inimical to our interests. So who is there to give us some kind of a backing in case of a regional conflict in which India gets embroiled? So this is something, a matter of conjecture, and I think students should understand the scenario very carefully. As General Atanu has also pointed out, the security scenario is building up very, very fast for India. And I think politically also, India stands rather isolated at this point of time in terms of its equation with the big powers. Oil will not come to India's rescue. I'm sorry. Oil is just a buy and sell. You are selling cheap oil, we are buying cheap oil, and that also doesn't come cheap to the Indian consumer. You are taking off taxes from there, and you are building your own funds, from the surplus, tax which you generate from that oil. It doesn't come down. The benefit does not come to the Indian citizen. So oil is not an issue. Russia, getting the full backing of Russia at this point of time is doubtful. Let me put it that way. Getting US on board to support India versus China, though that has been US's proclaimed policy of using India as a buffer, may not materialize. In either scenario, security, political, diplomatic, global, India is in a tight spot. That is how I would like to conclude.
Yes, thank you, sir. Sir, just one follow-up
Yes,
question.
you can conjecture what can happen.
Sir, considering like your point that like India doesn't have a permanent ally now, so can we say that like the movement, the situation like what you took like after independence, the non-alignment movement without joining the two blocks was a mistake from our strategic point? That's why we don't have a permanent ally now.
Atanu, you'd like to take that question?
The non-aligned movement was, born out of some romanticized view of the world at that time. We were greatly enthused by gaining our independence and thinking that we'll stay. But effectively, through the years, we were aligned more or less with Russians. If you simply go by our defense build-up over the years, especially after 62.
Yes.
So while we called ourselves non-aligned, but we are aligned mostly on the Russian Soviet lines. We had very close relationship. The ruling dispensation, the party itself had very close relationship with the Soviet leaders of those times. It's now ancient. It's pre-1991, but we are aligned, despite being so-called a leader of the non-aligned world. Currently, we are managing a lot of contradictions. If you recollect, last time I said, Iran is at war with Iraq, and we have got Chabahar port in Iran, and we got Haifa port in in Israel. So we have a port in the big port in Iran, we have a big port in Israel, and these two countries are at war. And what are we going to do about it? Whose side are we going to take? So this kind of contradictions are the domain of the diplomats. It requires nimble-footed handling, and so far we have been kind of successful in managing these contradictions, and possibly will continue to, because the world itself is if India is in a tight spot, remember the world is in a tighter spot. The US is embroiled deeply in the war in Ukraine. It's possible de-dollarization of the global economy and the future, its own economic future, considering that it is mounted, it has a huge $35 trillion debt. So itself is not, all hunky-dory there and can run things the way they ran, especially between 1989 and till a few years back. So is Russia. So is most of Europe, which is looking, staring at stagflation, recession, high inflation, agitation by farmers because energy prices have gone up. And add to that the migrants. We call migrants because it's a more diplomatic, good sounding word. It's basically an Islamic threat to the European civilization. That's playing out in UK. That will play out as soon as the Olympics get over in France. I just had a tour of that area 3 weeks back, and you can see glimpses of that. Areas which are complete no-go areas in Paris. So other countries are also equally more affected than us. The world is, remember, the world is growing at 3% on an average global scale, and we are growing at 7%. Some things are working for us. So hopefully, I do not want the students to feel disappointed. Challenges always confront a country, and especially when you gain more ascendancy, more power, more economic clout, more political clout, definitely there will be bigger challenges which you have to confront, and you should be skillful in dealing with all these contradictions.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a positive view.
Thank you so much, everyone. Actually, we are ahead, beyond the time. So it is a very good session. We have a lot of questions. People have a lot of questions to ask you. It's going to like a never-ending session. We all enjoy it, and definitely, ସମସ୍ତେ ଚାହୁଁଛେ ଯେ session continue ହବାକୁ, କିନ୍ତୁ some restriction Mala sir have already it is for the time for Malay sir.
Look, I have one suggestion, Deepak. Why don't you hold another supplementary session just to take questions? Because I'm sure all of them have at least 10 questions in their mind, just to air their doubts and again get us three on
Okay.
board, maybe somewhere next week, if all of us are agreed. And just questions. Nobody, we don't say anything, let them ask and we will just answer, because I'm sure they are carrying a lot of doubts even after this session. If you
Yes.
approve of that.
Sir, sir.
That's a very important subject. You know, how do you situate India in the global scenario? What are the challenges for India? I think that is very, very important. Bangladesh is one of them, but there are countless challenges which India has at this point in time, you know, geopolitically, geo-economically, in the global scenario. So I think you should have another session and let the students ask questions. And
Sure.
whatever we can answer, we will.
Definitely, sir. କାହିଁକି ନା ଏଇଥିରେ ବହୁତ ଗୁଡେ ଆମର ଯୋଉ ନେବରହୁଡ ରେ ଯୋଉ ଚ୍ୟାଲେଞ୍ଜେସ୍ ଅଛି ତାକୁ ନେଇକି ବହୁତ ଅଛି ଟିକେ ସ୍ପିଡ୍ କର ଅବିନାଶ। ତ ବହୁତ ଗୁଡେ ଆମର ଯୋଉ ଚ୍ୟାଲେଞ୍ଜ କ୍ରିଏଟ ହଉଛି ତ ତାକୁ ନେଇକି କେମିତି ଆମର ଇଣ୍ଡିଆର ଷ୍ଟାଣ୍ଡ ରହିବା କଥା, ଯୋଉ ଭଳିଆ ଡିଫିକଲ୍ଟ ସିଚୁଏସନ ରେ ଆମେ ସବୁବେଳେ ଡିଫିକଲ୍ଟ ସିଚୁଏସନ ରୁ ବାହାରିକି ଆସିଛେ, ତ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆ ପାଇଁ वी मस्ट वेट एंड वाच କୋଉ ଭଳିଆ ଆମେ ଆମର डिप्लोमेटिक स्टैंड ରହୁଛି and how we came out of this situation. तो definitely ଏଇ ଭଳିଆ ଆମର ଯୋଉ ଆମେ सेशन कले lot of question and lot of thoughts also came into mind कि कौन गवर्नमेंट रो स्टांस रहुची एंड जो फ्यूचर रे गवर्नमेंट आसीबो ता संगे केमती बेटर रिलेशन रहिबो, तो सेही पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू रु कौन हमरो स्टैंड रहिबा दरकार एंड डिफरेंट क्वेश्चन फ्रॉम like now from Bangladesh, China, Pakistan, then Maldives, again Maldives, Sri Lanka, and the world issue. So that time definitely would a session kariba jo three only question from the students, and to sei question guda ko ame economic angle lu ho or diplomatic or strategic angle lu takku ame try to apan manankara jo expert suggestion or view takku definitely no sir. Thank you so much sir for this session. It's a really a very interesting and insightful session, and thank you everyone jo mane join karitlo, and for 2 hours continuously we are in this discussion and you steadily with us for the 2 hours. Really it is shows that how much interest and how much you are interested to involve such type of discussion. Thank you everyone. We are fortunate to have you all sir in this platform, and really I mean first time by Odisha re emti कोठी भी होनी गोटे intellectual discussion with student manaka sangre जो माने कि future going to be the civil servant of the state. तो ई भले हमरो one hand actually we are trained them for the future. ई भले situation हेले तो कौन करा जीवो तांकर माइंड भितरे हमें आपनकर जो direction thoughts infuse करा जाउची so that they will become a better civil servant in future. Similar situation they can handle the situation in a better way. So thank you everyone. Thank you, especially thanks to Major General Atanu Patnaik sir, Dr. Mala Mishra sir, and Professor S.N. Mishra sir for this session. We are really grateful to you sir. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye. Namaskar. Namaskar.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Take
you
care.
sir.
Thank you, 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 sir.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you all for your patience.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you
and
very
good night.
much. And we'll meet again. We'll continue to meet. Don't worry. We are not going away so soon. Okay. Bye-bye.
Yes, sir.
Bye bye sir. Thank you. Good night sir.